Now, if you know me, you know I'm not a massive fan of just doing lots and lots of events, right? But the reality is they are kind of the bread and butter of many ERGs. So I thought I would do a video on here about how to make your events more impactful, right? So if you are, for example, doing events and people are not turning up, or you're putting events on and the event feedback is kind of like saying that people want something different or something more, or if you're struggling to get senior leaders engaged in your events, this is the video for you. So yeah, you know, I'm not a massive fan of only doing lots of events, but if that's where you are and you want to figure out how to level those up, then please do watch this video. I'm going to give you 5 key tips for making your events more impactful. This is ERG Strategy, the channel that brings you tools, tips, techniques, and everything in between to help you build engaged, effective employee resource groups and employee networks that really make a difference and have impact in your organization. So if that's what you're here for, you are in the right place. Let's get into it. How to make your events more impactful. So before I dive into the 5 tips, right? If you know me and if I've done any work with you, you'll know that I talk about getting balance in your ERG plan. So hopefully there is a link below to the resources that we have on the ergleader.com website. And on there you will find our latest ERG impact report. There's always one on there. It's either last year's or the current year's. But you know, if you're watching this in 2026, it's going to be the current year's. And that one is all about impact. And we've had incredible feedback in terms of the usefulness of that report. So please do go ahead and get that report if you haven't got it already. But one of the things that I talk about in terms of how ERGs can get balance is, as well as just having events, right, is making sure that you are getting involved in things like policy, making sure that, and by that I don't mean writing policy, I mean consulting and suggesting changes to relevant policies. I also want to see ERGs getting involved in process, right? Improving processes. I want to see ERGs getting involved in product and service development, cost to serve, the whole thing, right? I want to see ERGs having a much broader range of influence than just doing events, right? And so actually when I talk you through the 5 things that you can do to make your events more impactful, you will see that I'm kind of like nudging ERGs into a space that potentially feels a little bit different, but it's all about amping up your impact, right? So let's get into it, the 5 in no particular order. In fact, maybe it's the easier ones first. Yeah, maybe it is that. Because the first one is invite clients, especially if you are B2B, because often, in fact, somebody said this to me on a podcast that I was on. What was the podcast called? It was ERG Power Talk, ERG Power Hour. I can't remember. It was an ERG podcast with Joe Santana. You know, I gave an example of how ERGs can get involved in, you know, product and service development, bringing their own lived experiences as end consumers. And the podcast host, Joe Santana, asked me, what about B2B? And I think I might have said this on the podcast, but inviting clients to events. So if you are B2B, inviting key clients along to your events, you know, and I don't mean just like randomly reaching into client organizations and inviting people. I mean, you know, working with whoever your account managers are internally, and or sales and marketing or DI, wherever that relationship naturally sits, and kind of, you know, just adhering to some sort of protocol and kind of order. Don't just like randomly be like a maverick that just, you know, starts inviting all sorts of different companies, but get some sort of nod. Make sure the account manager knows about the event, because it probably means that there are now more guardrails around the events, more, you know, slightly more constraints, but it will be worth it, right? So invite clients along. I did a career accelerator for an organization last year, and they invited clients along, so clients could nominate individuals to come along to this session. Now that meant, did it mean that there was much of a difference? To be honest, I mean, you know, delivering something like that, you go through, you know, numbers of briefings with clients, and then once you've got your material, you go through with the clients what you're sort of covering and all of that. I'd probably say there was a little bit more scrutiny because clients were going to be in the room, clients of our client basically. But inviting clients is definitely something that will help to elevate your event. Even just internally, people will think, oh, they've invited such and such a client to that event. So it just elevates the event. It kind of gives the event more credibility because you've got clients coming. So that's the first thing you can do. Obviously, the content's got to be useful, right? And actually, and this links to the second one, when you invite kind of outsiders into events, it tends to raise the quality of the events anyway, right? Because you're not going to put any old like little nonsense in front of if clients are coming in. So this is what I find anyway. It tends to raise the quality of the events. Because the second group I'm talking about is inviting senior leaders in. So again, when you invite senior leaders in, from what I've seen, it tends to raise the quality of the event, because if you know that there's always going to be a senior leader, it's the content is going to be on another level. And obviously, hopefully, if you invite a senior leader in, you're hopefully going to get them to do something. They're either going to welcome people in, and this doesn't have to be your exec sponsor. It could be, if you're doing this event at a different site, it could be the most senior person on that site, or their rep or whoever. So hopefully they're going to maybe open the event up with a little bit of a welcome and, what are we doing here? Or they're going to close the event with a few words, right? So definitely inviting senior leaders. Again, it gives the event a little bit more credibility. You might be inviting them there for a bit of a Q&A, especially if you're diving into a particular business topic. So that's the second thing that you can do. Just invite the senior leaders. So those first two things, just inviting clients and inviting leaders. Yes, you might sort of say to me, okay, those things in and of themselves don't make impact, but actually they do. And for starters, they raise the visibility of individuals that are coming. So your ERG members are more likely to come. But again, as I say, it's going to raise the quality of the event. I guarantee it. The third one that I've got is inviting an area of the business in to present on something, their latest thing. A couple that I really like, actually. First of all, inviting customer insight team in to present, because they're presenting about like what makes your customers and clients tick, right? And that is where from like a commercial perspective, that is where a lot of kind of business focuses on, right? That's where it starts. So something around the market or market insight. So industry or market insight is always a really interesting one. And you can do that. You can either do it with an internal business area, or you could actually do it with an external. This is something many, many, many years ago when I was at an organization. We used to invite, and I was in the strategy team, we used to invite external individuals in with different perspectives, like for example, futurists. Yeah, there are these people that are called futurists. So we used to invite like futurists in, and just people with very different perspectives. I think we called it perspectives. I think we called these sessions perspectives, and they were always really well intended because people wanted to hear like what is the latest in the industry. And so as a as a network, if you are presenting useful business, market, industry sector information, or you're hosting the space to do that, it reflects really well on you, and it is really useful and valuable not only to the members but to other colleagues as well. So inviting a business area in to present on insight or an area of strategy or a particular product or market or part of the business, or inviting an external expert to come in around the sector or technology within the sector or whatever it be. The fourth one, this is particularly for events like your International Women's Day, your Black History Month, South Asian Heritage Month, disability awareness, mental health, etc. All of those months around kind of like identity, lived experience, protected characteristics. One of the things that I want to challenge, and I think that would be useful for your events, is to have some kind of update on action plans. So making it really explicit that, last year we set X, Y, and Z actions. This year we're going to have a session where maybe we're going to have a panel talking about the update on those actions. I found out how useful this was recently with a client that I was doing some work with, where we were like arranging events, and we were bringing in this speaker and that speaker to talk about this and that. And it wasn't until we were like, okay, let's just step back. And we did a member survey, so that helped. And we were like, do you know what? People are really interested in that. Like that core objective of this network is what people are interested in. Let's have some sessions around how we have done, how the network has done, how the organisations have done around that thing, and how we're going to update the action plan and get this thing back on track. And people were incredibly interested, right? So that's one thing I would say. If it is an event, particularly if it's an event around protected characteristics and the progression of those groups, for example, then, having a clear kind of like, what's the update on the action plans? What's happening? People, I think, would be quite interested in that. And again, you don't have to front that yourselves as a network. You can get the people team in to help present, so that it kind of like looks very joined up and you're not kind of just like going rogue on it. Okay. And then the fifth thing, which is probably slightly harder, but you just got to get your creative juices going. And if you're not sure what this looks like, I would encourage you to maybe put it out as a brainstorm to the committee. But I would love to see more competitions or more activity or discussion of business or industry challenges within network events. So if you're having something that literally is like a mixer, just make sure that there is. And I like the idea of competition, because people love competition, because people like to win, right? So competitions with little prizes, even if the prizes are literally just merch, right? But just imagine the buzz that creates, the social media that it creates, that you can just share internally, even if it's just on Viva Engage, right? Little competitions around business / industry challenges. If you've read my Substack, I do have a Substack, I keep forgetting to say. My Substack for last month, I was talking about the fact that, I have run Dragon's Den. I've done this a couple of times now, actually, at different organisations and variations of that theme. But Dragon's Den style pitches to execs and senior leaders, it goes down incredibly well, and the execs are like, wow, you guys are incredible. You really know your stuff. Well, no, I don't want to swear, so I'm just not going to finish that sentence. But yeah, so including some element of a competition around a business or industry challenge in your events does wonders. What it basically does is it demonstrates that you as a network aren't only focused internally on what the network is doing and colleagues. It demonstrates that you have that broader awareness of business and industry challenges. So that's what that basically does. And also, whoever is judging the competition, again, it's a way of getting other people involved in what you're doing. So that's it. 5 tips of how to make your events more impactful. Obviously, I'm still going to say you still need to be doing more than just the events. But if events is your bread and butter, or if you do an event once a quarter or once every 6 months, these are some tips for how you can move them along. I hope that was useful for you. If it was, please do give it a thumbs up. Share it with your co-chair, with your committee members, and with your exec sponsor. And I will see you in the next one. Ciao.